Let's talk about something that almost no one is saying out loud. It's never been easier to get a high LSAT score, and that's exactly why it's never been harder to compete. Right now, the top 14 law schools all have LSAT medians of 170 or above. Yale has an LSAT median of 174. Pause and think about that for a second. The median, not the top score, not the 75th percentile, that means that half the admitted students scored above a 174. So if you're walking into this process thinking a 165 is enough to get into the T14, you're already behind. Now, of course, you might be thinking to yourself, how is this even possible? Are people getting smarter every year? Of course not. What's actually happening is this. Some students have figured out how to game the system, not by cheating, but by knowing how to play the admissions game better than everyone else. They've found the hidden levers, the shortcuts, the soft spots in the process that let them tilt the odds in their favor. And they're pulling every single one of those levers while everyone else is still grinding through practice test 105 and obsessing over what color highlighter to use. So let's go deep on one of the biggest levers of all, extra time accommodations, and why it's quietly become one of the most powerful tools in LSAT prep. To go back in time a little bit, LSAC, the Law School Admission Council, the people who make the LSAT, used to be extremely strict with accommodations. You could have a legitimate diagnosed learning disability, ADHD, test anxiety, you could even be blind, and they would still say no to your requests. And as ridiculous as that might sound, this actually happened. Blind law school applicants requested reasonable accommodations for logic games, which of course are visual and rely on diagramming, and LSAC refused. So LSAC got sued multiple times by individual students, by disability rights organizations, and even by the U.S. Department of Justice itself. It became a legal liability, and eventually LSAC had no choice but to cave. And when they caved, they didn't just fix the problem for individual students. They removed logic games from the LSAT entirely last year. They also overhauled their accommodations process and swung hard in the other direction. Where they used to approve roughly 70% of requests, they now approve 98%. Again, 98%. That means if you send in a formal request with documentation from a psychologist, a psychiatrist, or even just your primary care physician, you are almost guaranteed to get the accommodations that you request. And what kind of accommodations are we talking about? We could be talking about time and a half, double time, even triple time, stop-start breaks, multi-day testing, paper-based format, private testing environment, even up to 160 minutes per section versus the standard 35. Now, triple time would be 105 minutes. That's nearly 2 hours to do what others are doing in just 35. You don't need to be a testing expert to see what kind of advantage this is. Now, let's talk about how this actually plays out. I've had students tell me, I got time and a half accommodations, but I realized I still ran out of time on reading comp. So I went back to my psychologist, got the documentation updated, and reapplied. LSAC gave me double time plus stop-start breaks. This is not theoretical. This is happening right now. And the students getting accommodations, they're not always the ones with the most severe conditions. They're just the ones who understand how the system works, and they're taking advantage of it as they should. Because here's the thing. Law schools will never know that you had extra time. Your score report doesn't say time and a half. It doesn't flag you at all. It doesn't say that you had ADHD. It just shows a number like anyone else. It could be 172, 168, 177. And in a zero-sum admissions process where every point could mean the difference between Columbia and Cardozo, between sticker price and a full ride, that number matters more than anything. Now, last year, LSAC released a detailed 85-page report on the impact of tested accommodations. I read the whole thing. Most people didn't, and most people never will. But here's what stood out to me. Test takers with accommodations score an average of 5 points higher than those without. 5 points. That is not a rounding error, and that's not just noise. That's the difference between being waitlisted at Duke and getting into NYU with a scholarship. And let me be clear here. If accommodations were truly just leveling the playing field, you'd expect those students to score the same as everyone else. But they don't. On average, they do 5 points better. So what does this tell us? It tells us that accommodations don't just level the playing field. In many cases, they tilt it. They give a boost. And again, this isn't about fraud. This is about information. If you qualify and you don't apply for accommodations, you are literally choosing to take the LSAT on hard mode while others are playing on easy mode. Now, I'll be honest, part of me wishes this system was more precise. One psychologist's note should not be the gatekeeper to a 10-point score boost. You probably shouldn't be getting unlimited breaks and double time just because some clinician checked the right box on a form. But that is the reality. Now, here's what I don't want. I don't want students who genuinely suffer from ADHD, anxiety, PTSD, or any other valid issue to be ashamed of asking for help. This is not cheating. It's not gaming the system. It's asking for what you are allowed to have. It's using the entire rulebook, not just the parts you've heard about. So if you are constantly running out of time, if you're blanking out under pressure, if you've had a therapist or a doctor ever mention a possible diagnosis, it is worth looking into accommodations, not just for the boost, but to give yourself the best chance of showing what you're capable of on test day. You can't afford to ignore this. Now, the LSAT isn't just about logic, it's about strategy. You're not being tested on whether you can ID assumptions or flaws. You're being tested on whether you know how to play the entire admissions game, and top performers do. They know when to prep, they know when to pause and when to retake, how to frame their essays, how to ask for scholarships, and yes, how to apply for accommodations that give them an edge. If you want to win this game, you've got to think like they do. Because every seat at top law schools is limited. Every dollar of scholarship money is finite. And the people who win, they don't necessarily work harder, they just understand the rules better.